The job nobody wants? That's me. Jack Renaud, flood inspector in and around New Orleans. I'm the one crawling through storm drains and overflow tunnels after the city gets slammed by rain. I used to be a firefighter before an injury knocked me off that ladder, and the city stuck me in this hole, literally. Most of the other inspectors find reasons to dodge these assignments. Bad backs, sick kids, phony overtime conflicts. But me? I've got no kids, no spouse, and too much credit card debt to pass on the hazard pay. So when the last storm rolled through and Bywater residents started filing complaints, low drainage, strange smells, animal noises, I didn't wait to be volunteered. I knew I'd be the one going down there. The complaints pointed toward an old overflow tunnel. It's a relic from a time before modern flood control, built in the 40s, if I had to guess. Mostly forgotten, but still technically active on paper. It's the kind of place where rats rule, and things bigger than rats don't usually survive. But I didn't wait for backup. Didn't even radio it in. I figured I'd take a quick look, write up some boilerplate, and be home in time for dinner. I dropped into the tunnel alone, flashlight in one hand and gas meter in the other, boots squelching through wet muck and runoff. The air hit me like a slap. Burned meat laced with sewage so thick it seemed to crawl into my throat. It didn't smell dead. It smelled cooked, like a barbecue in hell. Then I saw something I didn't expect. Bones everywhere, snapped and piled in the runoff. Not clean like animal kill. These were chewed, some split open for marrow. I felt my breath hitch as I knelt to get a closer look. Something about the way the marrow had been sucked out sent a chill up my spine, like I was kneeling in front of a butcher's altar. My skin prickled with unease, cold sweat forming under my collar despite the humid stink of the tunnel. I told myself it could be feral dogs, maybe even a deranged person living down here, but my gut clenched tighter with every step. The gouges across the concrete were something different entirely, deep, angry, and wide apart. Way too wide for dogs and too high up. And then the grates, twisted like pretzels. I just stared at them, my mouth dry. Metal doesn't bend like that unless something strong wants through. That was the moment the dread really bloomed in my chest, slow and heavy, like an anchor settling deep into my ribs. I should have turned back. Every instinct screamed at me to climb out of that hole and never look back. But underneath the fear, something else stirred. A gnawing sense of curiosity I couldn't ignore. It was stupid, sure, maybe suicidal, but I wanted to understand what exactly I was dealing with. What kind of animal or lunatic could carve out a life down here and create such a mess? Some part of me wanted to believe it was just a person, a deranged squatter with a twisted sense of home. But deep down, I knew better. I told myself it was professional curiosity, part of the job, but really, it was something deeper. A sick thrill in the unknown. That's what scared me most. Not just the creature, but the fact that some part of me wanted to see it. I wandered deeper for a few minutes, heart pounding. Every step stirring up puddles of filth and sludge. The tunnel forked once, then again, but I kept within sight of the main line, scanning the walls and ceiling for anything that might explain what I had just seen. A few rats scattered from a torn trash bag. A busted pipe dripped steadily into a pool slick with oily sheen. My curiosity fought with rising panic. Every sound echoed too long, every shadow seemed to shift. I kept my light low and moved slow, trying not to spook myself, but I was already spooked. Something about this place, it felt claimed. After a few more minutes, with my nerves fraying and my breath starting to shake, I finally accepted I'd gone far enough. My head throbbed from the pressure of stale, hot air, and my shirt clung to my back with sweat. I told myself I'd come back soon, with better gear, maybe with someone else to watch my back. But right now, I needed to get out of this godforsaken place. I turned around, retracing my route slowly, flashlight beams skating over slime-streaked walls and tunnels that now felt even darker. I tried to focus on my breathing, in and out, keeping my pace steady. That's when it happened. A flicker of motion at the edge of my vision. I froze, heart locked in my chest. I whipped the beam around so fast my wrist cracked, and there, just for a heartbeat, I saw it. It stood at the far end of a side tunnel, maybe 60, 70 feet away, just outside the reach of my flashlight. I could make out its silhouette more than its details, but what I did see gave me nightmares, likely for the rest of my life. The thing was hunched at first, its long limbs folded beneath it like a waiting predator. It shimmered with moisture, steam curling off its back in the tunnel's heat. Then, slowly, unnervingly, it rose. Not like a startled animal scrambling to flee, but with a patient, deliberate stretch, vertebrae cracking one by one like wet knuckles. It stood tall, 6 feet, maybe more, with a posture like something that could imitate human shape, but didn't quite belong in it. The proportions looked off, arms too long, back too arched, legs bent unnaturally. And yet, something about it made me hesitate. My rational mind latched onto the idea that maybe it was a person, a very tall, horribly deformed, possibly sick person living in these tunnels. The kind of case that ends up on the local news after someone finally goes missing. Maybe they'd been burned. Maybe they had a disability. I don't know. But I couldn't shake the feeling that if I turned and left without trying to make contact, I'd regret it. That maybe, just maybe, this just a man, twisted and lost, but human. So I did something stupid. I raised my voice and called out, "Hey, you all right down there? You need help?" It didn't respond, didn't flinch, just kept standing there, breathing slow and heavy, like it didn't care, or like it was listening. Despite every warning bell clanging in my brain, I took a step forward, then another. My boots echoed wetly on the concrete, each footfall louder than it should have been. I held my flashlight steady, beam trembling just a little. "You all right, bro?" "Boom," I called again, voice catching on the stale air. "I work for the city. Do you need help?" No answer. No movement. Just that heavy, rasping breath. I crept closer, maybe 10 feet. My heart thundered against my ribs. I wanted to believe so badly that this was just a person. Maybe someone who'd fallen through the cracks, surviving the only way they knew how. Probably just as scared and confused as I was. But something was wrong with the air. Thicker, heavier. And the shape. It didn't react like a person. It didn't show fear, or surprise, or confusion. Then, as I took one more cautious step, it did something that shattered whatever hope I had left. It dropped. Not collapsed. Dropped. Like its bones liquefied and reformed in a single fluid motion. One moment upright, the next hunched again. Its limbs bending the wrong way as it fell forward onto all fours. The wet slap of its hands, or paws, or whatever they were, echoed down the tunnel like raw meat hitting tile. That broke something in me. I staggered back, nearly slipping. The way it moved, it wasn't just wrong, it was obscene. Like a body rebelling against the rules of anatomy. And then it turned, its head cocked sharply toward me. Just for a second, the beam caught a clearer glimpse of it, and what I saw turned my stomach. The head looked elongated, almost canine in silhouette, but wrong in every way. It seemed to lack fur. Its skin looked more like mottled, hairless leather stretched over bone. The jawline jutted out too far, and I caught a glimpse of teeth. Long, uneven, too many of them, like they had kept growing without stopping. No lips, no expression, just a raw, wet snarl frozen into its flesh. One eye caught the light, a reflection, not like a human eye, but glossy and low-set, like it wasn't meant to face forward. It wasn't human, not even close. Whatever illusions I'd clung to about deformity or mental illness were gone, and then it dropped its gaze, crouched again, and slipped into the black, swallowed by the tunnel with a sound like wet silk sliding through pipes. The silence that followed was worse than any sound it could have made. I didn't wait around. I turned and ran, then climbed out faster than I ever had and didn't stop moving until I was back in my truck, doors locked, hands trembling. I didn't file a detailed report that day. What could I say? Saw something weird? Smelled something worse? No one in the department would take it seriously, and even if they did, they'd send a cleanup crew or an engineer, someone not ready for what's actually down there. so I kept it vague, flagged it as hazardous, noted the smell and damage and left it buried in the system. But I wasn't done. Not even close. There's one guy I trust with stuff like this. Wes. He's my age, a geek with a utility belt. Technically a contractor, but really he's an urban explorer with a city badge. Guy lives for weird infrastructure, hidden catacombs, forgotten fallout shelters, you name it. He's the kind of guy who tags you in grainy Reddit threads about tunnels no one's supposed to know about. If something's strange, decaying, or possibly haunted, Wes wants in. He's the only one I know who wouldn't just believe me. He'd want to see it, probably already half-packing his gear the second I say weird sewer shit. A few days later, we went back, this time with real prep. Wes showed up like it was Christmas morning. He had his FPV drone with a thermal cam already calibrated, plus a spare battery pack clipped to his hip. We brought high-lumen tactical flashlights, sealed boots, gloves, masks, and a couple of disposable Tyvek suits to keep the worst of the filth off us. I carried a standard-issue can of pepper spray. Wes, of course, had gone the extra mile. He strapped a full-length machete to his belt like we were headed into the jungle. "What? You saw it," he said, shrugging when I raised an eyebrow. "I'm not getting mauled in a storm drain without at least trying to look cool." We dropped into the same tunnel. The second we unsealed the hatch, the stench rolled out like a physical force, hotter, riper than before. The wet heat hit us immediately, wrapping around our gear like a damp towel soaked in decay. Wes wrinkled his nose behind the mask. "Jesus, it's like something died trying to crawl out." I didn't answer. I was too focused on the tunnel ahead. Wes prepped the drone, checking the signal range for the third time. "We're not going to get much, maybe 500 feet max before this thing starts dropping frames," he warned. The thick concrete and layout down here made reception unpredictable at best. We calibrated it anyway, set the thermal overlay to pulse through the feed, and sent it down the side tunnel where I'd seen the thing. From the start, the signal was jittery. It stuttered, fuzzed, and glitched every few seconds, but we still caught glimpses. Slick brick walls, thick humidity dripping from overhead seams, and rats scattering in slow jerks as the drone buzzed forward through the slime. The drone pushed ahead for another few hundred feet, the feed glitching and ghosting frames as it crept deeper. Just when we thought we might lose signal entirely, the tunnel opened up into a larger, irregular chamber, a runoff overflow basin maybe, or an old maintenance pocket that had never made it onto the new blueprints. The place was a complete mess. Trash, mattresses, and God knows what else filled the space like a squat camp abandoned years ago. The drone's light bounced off rusted cans, blackened clothing, shattered plastic bins, and a tangle of rat-eaten food wrappers. In the far corner, barely illuminated, was a stained old mattress sunken into the muck. Mold bloomed across it in patches, and a dark shape, maybe a soaked blanket, or maybe something worse, was draped over one end. Filth mounded in the corners like it had been swept intentionally. It looked like someone or something had tried to rest there. "Jesus," Wes whispered. "You seeing this?" I nodded without answering, eyes locked on the screen. The place wasn't just full of trash. It had been arranged, organized. Nestled into the filth was a structure of sorts, not walls or furniture, but a territory marked out in debris. There were clusters of clothing stuffed into corners like insulation, a broken folding chair missing half its legs, and crude piles of bones, some animal, some maybe not, sorted by size like it had tried to make order from chaos. The mattress was more than just a place to sleep. It was sunken into the muck with something like intention, surrounded by trails in the grime where something large had moved back and forth repeatedly. Above it, the ceiling was blackened with soot or mildew, maybe both. Even the trash seemed weirdly curated. Certain items repeated. Empty cans of the same off-brand meat, crumpled fast food wrappers from joints that had closed years ago, half-burnt candles, crayon drawings nailed to a rotting pallet. Wes leaned closer to the screen, hands gripping the edges of his iPad tightly. His voice dropped to a hush. "That's weird, man. Like, really weird." His face had lost its usual smirk, replaced by a tense stillness I didn't see often. His eyes flicked across the screen like he was trying to make sense of it all, cataloging, analyzing, looking for patterns where none belonged. Then he rubbed the back of his neck slowly, like the unease had crept under his skin. I felt it too. The cold settled in my gut despite the heat, a crawling sense of exposure needling the space between my shoulder blades. My mouth had gone dry. Whatever we were looking at, it didn't belong here. Not in this tunnel. Not in any rational explanation I could come up with. And what rattled me most was how human it looked. Not the creature, we hadn't seen it again yet, but the space itself. This wasn't some animal's den. This was arranged. There was intention behind the layout, behind the mess, a logic, the kind you only see in people, maybe damaged people, maybe feral, but not a dumb beast. All the garbage felt like it had meaning to whoever, or whatever, lived here. This wasn't just a creature holed up underground. It was someone making a home. The signal dipped again, froze, came back, just for a second. Enough to show the edge of something shifting just outside the beam's cone. A vague shape, low and thick, slinking along the far side of the chamber. Just as quickly, the image fractured into digital noise. Then the feed dropped entirely. We stared at the screen, waiting, hoping it would come back. After a few seconds of dead silence, the picture flickered again. But something was wrong. The view was now sideways, then upside down, as if the drone had been knocked over. We caught a glimpse of the chamber's floor, grime-caked, wet, strewn with filth and scrap. Then something moved into frame, a hand, or something close. Thick, blackish skin stretched tight over long fingers, ending in black, curved claws. The texture looked more like hide than flesh. It hovered just inches from the drone lens, twitching once. Then the static swallowed it whole. Wes wanted the drone back, badly. It had cost him a month's pay, and more importantly, it was his pride and joy. "That drone has more brains than half the people on my job site," he muttered, pacing while I sat on the ledge, trying to process what we'd seen. "It didn't just vanish. Something took it, and I want it back." "You want to go in there?" I asked, already knowing the answer. My stomach twisted. I'd come prepared for weird, but not that kind of weird. Wes looked at me, eyes lit up with adrenaline and curiosity, not fear. "Yeah, man. This is the good stuff. Urban legend material. Strange creature living under the city? How could I not?" I hesitated. Every bone in my body said, "Don't go in there." We argued for a few more minutes. I threw out all the right objections. No backup, bad visibility, unstable structures. But he countered everyone with tools, backup plans, and that damn machete. There was something steadying about having Wes there. Despite everything, his confidence seemed to rub off on me, just a little bit. Enough to make a really stupid decision. I caved. Wes was going in regardless. I sure as hell wasn't letting him go by himself. So we suited up. Wes had the machete, slung tight against his side like a seasoned explorer. I took the beat-up wooden baseball bat I had grabbed from his truck and clipped my can of pepper spray to my belt, hoping it would give us even half a second of advantage if things went sideways. We both carried flashlights, big, tactical-grade ones that could double as blunt weapons if it came to it. Wes cracked jokes to mask his excitement. I didn't. My grip tightened around the bat, with every step toward the dark. We descended again, deeper this time. The tunnel opened into the old overflow basin, a vast chamber I didn't remember being this dark. We took the same route the drone had taken minutes earlier, stepping over wrappers, bones, and fur clumps caught in pipe seams. We moved slow, taking careful, deliberate steps, flashlights cutting narrow cones through the oppressive dark. Every squelch underfoot made my gut clench, and every drip from the ceiling made us flinch. We didn't speak. Despite all of Wes's bravado, he was just as scared as I was. That much I knew. Wes led the way, machete drawn, held low and steady. I kept my bat tight to my side, pepper spray in my other hand, thumb hovering near the trigger. The further we moved in, the more my nerves twisted into something cold and tight. We kept walking for what felt like forever, every step a little heavier than the last. The tunnel stretched on, curving slightly, and our boots stirred up a mix of slime and debris with each move. The closer we got to where the drone had disappeared, the worse the air became, thicker, hotter, and foul in a way that stuck to your teeth. The sickly sweet rot came in waves now, growing stronger with every yard. My stomach churned, but I swallowed it down and pushed on. Wes stayed quiet ahead of me, but his flashlight beam bounced more now, his steps slower. We were close. We both felt it. When we finally stepped into the chamber, it took a second to register how much bigger it was than it had looked on the drone feed. Our lights couldn't even reach the far walls without sweeping back and forth. The place sprawled, with old pipes arcing overhead like ribs in a rotting skeleton, and multiple tunnels branching off in every direction. Some looked like collapsed service routes. Others were smooth and wide, swallowing light as if they led nowhere. The darkness felt active, alive, like it was watching us from every opening. This wasn't just a chamber. It was a hub. We swept the entire chamber first, flashlights moving in careful arcs, slow and methodical. Every time a beam crossed a dark tunnel mouth, I held my breath. Wes kept his light steady, sweeping low, then high, then back again, checking every shadow for movement. My heart pounded in my ears, louder with each pass of the beam. No sign of it, no breathing, no skittering, just the sound of our boots in sludge and the occasional hiss of a leaking pipe. Once we were reasonably sure the creature wasn't lurking in there somewhere, we moved in, step by step, into the heart of the lair. It looked like a landfill had been set on fire and abandoned. Bones were scattered across the floor, broken, splintered, stripped clean. Some were animal, others, I didn't want to guess. What chilled me was how many of them looked almost arranged, twisted into shapes like altars or crude nests. Not piles, arrangements, symbols of something, worship or madness, I couldn't tell. There were dozens, maybe hundreds of rat skulls scattered through the chamber, some in spirals, others in little pyramids. Their tiny incisors gleamed white under the flashlight, like teeth in a nightmare grin. In another corner, I spotted a few half-decayed cat remains, ribs exposed, fur matted into the filth, eye sockets long emptied. One had a collar still clinging to its neck, the charm rusted and unreadable. But what really stopped me cold was the canine skull sitting atop a blackened crate in the far corner. Its jaw hung open as if in mid-howl, and its teeth, yellowed and cracked, seemed far too familiar. Next to it, like a shrine or offering, was a small, neat stack of dog collars, at least 5 or 6 of them, all worn, all filthy, all real. Wes muttered something under his breath I couldn't make out, but he didn't move for a long time. Neither did I. We stepped deeper into the room. Tons of garbage was piled up in corners, soaked through with black muck and stuck to the floor, like it had become part of the structure. Scraps of clothing were strung along broken pipes or tangled around rusted rebar, like someone had tried decorating with remnants of the outside world. Jeans, kids' t-shirts, old work boots, all mottled with rot and decay. Even a child's shoe, pink with faded cartoon characters, lay tilted on its side in a pool of dark water, as if deliberately placed there. No bones there, though, thank God. Against the far wall were old, collapsing cardboard boxes sagging with moisture and warped from time. We opened one carefully with the tip of Wes's machete and found a stack of yellowed newspapers, some bundled tight with string, others half melted together by mildew. Another box was filled with random household junk, tangled phone chargers, a few cracked handheld gaming consoles, rolls of duct tape, a rusted garden trowel. It was like someone had been collecting whatever they could find, then never used any of it. A cluster of Barbie dolls, all missing limbs and coated in filth. Some were crushed flat, others melted into hunks of warped plastic. But the strangest part was the bite marks. Each doll had been gnawed on, jagged impressions along the torsos and heads, as if something with formidable teeth had tried to chew through them. Some bites were shallow, just enough to crack the plastic. Others had gouged deep, splitting the dolls open at odd angles. One doll's face was entirely caved in, the eyes punctured by what looked like claws or incisors. Wes crouched to take a closer look, then recoiled. "What the hell?" he whispered. I didn't respond. I just stood there, frozen, staring at those ruined toys like they were sacred offerings. It didn't look like play. It looked like obsession or practice. Either way, it crawled under my skin and stayed there. The more we looked, the more this place resembled a hoarder's bunker. Piles of trash stuffed into the gaps between pipes and walls, crates packed with forgotten tools and useless junk, broken electronics, mismatched shoes, VHS tapes, even a stack of old license plates fanned out like oversized playing cards. One corner held dozens of empty bottles, many filled with yellow-brown sludge or capped with soggy rags. A makeshift shelf, made from concrete chunks, held a few rotted paperbacks and what looked like a shriveled potted plant, long dead. It wasn't just trash. It was collected, chosen. Even in all the mess, some of it was packed neatly, like it meant something. Other bits were scattered across the floor, like someone had tried using or building something and given up halfway through. I didn't know whether we were looking at signs of madness, memory, or just instinct, but either way, it felt disturbingly personal. The stink was thick enough to taste: sweet rot, rust, mildew, piss, sewage. My throat burned. I pulled my mask tighter, but it didn't help much. Every breath was a fight not to gag. The walls were scarred and battered. Deep gouges were carved into the concrete, some neat and straight, others wild and chaotic, slashing upward in long, furious arcs. They reminded me of claw marks. The spacing seemed right for something the size of a grizzly. Pipes along the ceiling and walls were bent or caved in, some split open like crushed tin cans. Insulation and slime drooled from their wounds. Wes moved slowly, panning his light around with clinical detachment, but I could tell by how tight he held his machete he wasn't feeling calm. Neither was I. This wasn't just some animal's den. It was a storm shelter for something we couldn't possibly imagine. A place it had built up over time, layer by layer. The longer I looked, the more I realized this wasn't just the home of something monstrous. It was something close to sacred to it, like we were walking through a chapel built out of refuse and death. We shouldn't be there. We both knew it, but we kept going anyway. We were still moving slowly through the heart of the lair, flashlights tracking over the clutter, when something shifted at the edge of my vision. I turned, breath catching in my throat, and everything inside me dropped. A shape had emerged, quiet and deliberate, from one of the side tunnels. It didn't lunge, it didn't scream, not yet. It just appeared, standing perfectly still at the edge of the chamber, on two legs. For a moment, I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. My flashlight hit the ground loudly as my grip faltered. The shape was there, unmistakable, real, not a shadow or trick of the light. It stood in the tunnel mouth like it had always been there, like it had been waiting for us to notice. My thoughts scrambled to make sense of it. A person? A squatter? Some nightmare left over from a fever dream? But nothing fit. The proportions, the stillness, the sheer presence of it, none of it aligned with anything human. And yet, it stood there, on two legs, probably watching my every move. A cold wave rolled through my body, from the top of my skull to the soles of my feet, and my legs locked in place. I was terrified in a way I hadn't been since my rookie firehouse days, when I thought a roof might collapse on me. But this was worse. This was wrong, primally wrong. I felt like I was looking at something I was never meant to see. Wes hadn't even seen it yet. I couldn't speak to warn him. My voice just wasn't there. The thing stood in the shadows, motionless but tense, like a coiled spring. Its limbs seemed too long, its body oddly hunched, like it had grown for something else and was only pretending to be bipedal. For a few seconds, I thought maybe it hadn't noticed us, but then it moved, slowly, subtly. Not forward, not back, just a tilt of the head, like it was curious, or maybe like it already knew what we were and was deciding what to do with us. The movement was so eerily smooth, so deliberate, it made my skin crawl. That head tilt wasn't animal. It was analytical, like it was studying us, memorizing how we breathed, how we held our weapons, how afraid we were. Something about the way it shifted, just that tiny, precise motion, told me we weren't looking at a wild beast. Then it took a single step forward, slow, deliberate, heavy. That's when Wes finally noticed it. His body jerked slightly, like a jolt of electricity had gone through him. He inhaled sharply, eyes going wide behind his fogged-up goggles. He raised his flashlight instinctively and pointed it directly at the thing's face. As the powerful beam struck the creature's face, the effect was instant. It recoiled violently, jerking back as if the light were acid. A guttural hiss tore from its throat, guttural and furious. It threw an arm up, long, knotted, and covered in patchy, blackened hide to shield its face. The hand was monstrous, thick-jointed fingers ending in obsidian claws, twitching in irritation as if resisting the urge to strike. It staggered backward into the tunnel, half turning as if confused or enraged by the sudden burst of brightness. Its body writhed in the shadows, spasming in frustration. For a fleeting moment, we saw it clearly. Its face, oh God, its face was a mask of biological horror, elongated and warped, like a wolf's skull that had been melted and stitched back together with sinew and madness. Its mouth was a snarl of jagged, uneven teeth, yellowed and broken, far too many to fit inside a normal jaw. Its nose was almost vestigial, collapsed into a crumpled ridge, and the skin, tight and leathery, pulled across its features like parchment stretched over bone. One eye had caught the light directly for a fraction of a second, a milky, bulbous orb reflecting like a mirror, and the expression, if you could call it that, wasn't rage. It was fury, like the light had violated some sacred rule. Wes made a choking sound, stumbling back. My stomach turned and bile rose in my throat, my body's primal response to something utterly, irredeemably wrong. This thing wasn't just ugly. It was wrong in a way the brain couldn't process without recoil. My legs twitched to bolt, but I caught myself before I fell into full panic. Adrenaline surged like electricity, but something in me clicked. Training, maybe. I stepped backward and grabbed Wes's arm. "Kill the light," I whispered, surprisingly calm. He looked at me like I was insane. "Just do it." The beam was still locked on the creature's shape, and it was writhing, half-blind, enraged, breathing like a bull before the charge. I didn't know if dimming the light would help or doom us, but it was better than standing frozen, baiting it. Wes hesitated, then slowly lowered his wrist. As the beam slipped away from its face, the creature stopped thrashing. Its posture stiffened, then stilled, like someone had hit pause. For one breathless moment, the only sound was that awful breathing, heavy, wet, rhythmic. I dared a glance at Wes. His eyes were locked on it, wide and unblinking. My heart pounded so loud, it felt like it was echoing through the tunnel. The thing didn't step forward, but it didn't retreat either. It just stood there, swaying slightly, claws twitching, like it was waiting or calculating. We'd interrupted something, and it wasn't sure if that deserved mercy or violence. It took a step toward us, slow and quiet. Wes stiffened, and I instinctively tightened the grip around my bat, though I knew damn well it wouldn't matter. The thing could have killed us a dozen times already if it wanted to. Instead, it approached with a kind of curiosity. It drew closer until it was barely 15 feet away, close enough for our lights to catch the sheen of drool on its snarled lips. The muscles in its arms coiled and uncoiled slowly, like it was still deciding what we were, prey, threat, or something in between. We stood motionless, both of us sweating through our suits, hearts thudding in unison, like trapped animals waiting for the cage to snap shut. Now that it was closer, the light reflecting off the floor fell across its face, and I wished it hadn't. The thing's features were clearer than before, and they were worse than anything I could have imagined. Its skin looked torn and stitched in places, like it had been rebuilt from scraps of flesh, Its snout twitched with every breath, flaring to reveal rows of jagged, uneven teeth, like a bear trap stuck in mid-spring. The eyes were mismatched, one milky and glassy, the other sharp and glinting, with something that wasn't just intelligence. Then, Wes whispered, "I think it's a werewolf." I glanced at him, horrified, not because he said it, but because it fit. Too human to be a beast, too monstrous to be a man. I didn't respond. Couldn't. Wes reached slowly, so damn slowly, into his side pocket and pulled out a foil-wrapped protein bar. It was thick, greasy, the kind of thing you bring on long-haul jobs. He peeled the wrapper back, keeping his hands visible the whole time. Then, with a small, trembling gesture, he extended it forward and dropped it gently on the ground. The creature stared. It didn't move at first. Then one step, two. It sniffed the air sharply, tilted its head again, and reached down with one clawed hand. It snatched the snack so fast I almost fell backward. Then it crouched low, back hunching like a folding blade, and tore into the bar with sharp, crunching bites. Wrapper and all. Its eyes never left us. Every motion was measured, like it was eating while keeping a tally of how we reacted. We stood there like statues. There was no mistaking it. We were locked in something delicate, a test, a negotiation, and for those few long, miserable seconds, we had a truce, but it didn't last. As soon as it finished devouring the protein bar, wrapper and all, it rose slowly, fluidly, and began approaching again. This time, it came straight for me. I couldn't move. My legs had turned to rebar, fused with the floor. It stopped just inches away, so close I could see the slick glisten on its gums. Then it leaned in. It sniffed me. Long, slow inhales, right against my chest, my throat, my face. I could feel the wet heat of its breath on my neck, and for a moment, I was sure I was about to die. I clenched everything, jaw locked tight, stomach twisting in on itself. My bladder nearly gave out. The smell coming off it was unbearable, like spoiled meat and wet fur marinated in sewer water. I stared straight ahead, refusing to meet its eyes, afraid that even a twitch might set it off. It exhaled once, a deep, hot gust that ruffled the collar of my suit, and then, somehow, it stepped back. It moved past me without another sound, toward the mattress we'd noticed earlier. My hands were shaking. I dared not breathe. The creature crouched and yanked a moldy blanket aside, like it was searching for something, or showing us. Behind it, I caught the glint of plastic and metal, our drone, jammed halfway beneath the frame. But what stopped my heart cold was the dark blue fabric draped beside it. A crumpled navy blue uniform sleeve, smeared with filth, poked out from under a collapsed milk crate. My stomach dropped. It was a city-issued flood inspection shirt. Same kind I wore. Same patch. Same reflective striping. I glanced at Wes. He'd seen it too. Neither of us said a word. Wes stepped beside me as the thing loomed between us and the mattress. Instead of pouncing, it crouched slowly onto the stained mattress, its limbs folding with unnatural fluidity. Even as it sank into the moldy padding, it never took its eyes off us, not for a second. Its gaze held the weight of threat and thought, as if it were calculating every breath we took. The muscles in its back rippled beneath its matted fur, tense and coiled, like a spring waiting to snap. A low, guttural snarl vibrated from deep in its chest, rising with each second we remained still. The air was thick with heat and dread. Every second stretched razor-thin. "We should go," Wes muttered, barely audible. I didn't answer. My eyes were locked on the crumpled uniform behind it, that flash of reflective silver across the chest. I needed to know what I was looking at. Who had been down here? Had the creature taken one of our people? I swallowed hard, then took a slow, cautious step forward. The creature's eyes tracked me, unblinking, its body motionless except for the twitch of one clawed finger. I tried to project calm, to make every movement deliberate. I kept the bat low at my side, not raised, but still in my grip. My heart thundered in my ears as I closed the gap, sweat pouring down my neck, every instinct screaming at me to stop. But I had to see the name patch on that uniform, had to know what had happened here. I crept close enough to crouch beside the collapsed uniform, the creature still watching from the mattress like a coiled wire. I reached out, slowly, and turned the fabric over until the grime gave way to faded embroidery. McTavish. The name didn't ring a bell, but I would look into it. I barely had time to memorize the name before the creature's chest rumbled louder. A deep, guttural growl began to rise, slow and steady, the sound of patience thinning to anger. Then my instincts kicked in. I raised the bat, not to hit it, but to buy space. A mistake. The moment the bat moved, the thing charged. It didn't roar. It screamed, a shrill, distorted wail that echoed down the tunnels like a siren in a nightmare. It hit me hard in the chest, a blur of black muscle and claws. I flew backward, slammed into a rusted pipe, and collapsed onto the wet concrete. The impact knocked the breath from my lungs. I couldn't move, couldn't think. Somewhere above me I heard Wes scream. Then the creature turned its focus toward him. I twisted just enough to see it lunge. Wes dodged, the machete slicing air as he scrambled backward. Wes swung again, this time connecting. The blade tore into the creature's shoulder with a sickening, wet crack. It shrieked, a sound so loud it felt like glass in my ears. But the blow threw Wes off balance, and he fell backward hard, his legs scrambling against the slime-slick floor. Before he could crawl away, the creature lunged and clamped its clawed hand around his ankle. It began to drag him, snarling and frothing, toward one of the tunnels. Wes screamed, kicking frantically. His flashlight spun across the chamber, casting wild shadows. I rolled onto my knees, dizzy and nauseous. But the sight of him being dragged jolted me. I grabbed the bat and stumbled forward, teeth clenched. I had to help him, now. I didn't think. I ran. The bat felt like a lifeline in my hands. I swung with everything I had, cracking it across the creature's warped spine. It howled in pain, twitching, but still didn't drop Wes. I shouted profanities and swung again as it turned its disgusting face toward me. The bat connected with the side of its head, hard. A spray of spit and blood hit my face as the beast recoiled, shrieking. Wes rolled free, panting and pale. I yanked him toward me, dragging him away from the raging creature, which staggered but didn't fall. It shook its head violently and began snarling again, looking directly at me. In a moment of clarity, I reached for the pepper spray clipped to my belt, popped the cap with a snap, and took aim. The pepper spray hit its eyes dead on. It let out a gurgling, enraged shriek, stumbling back and clawing at its face. I grabbed Wes and dragged him toward the tunnel we came from, adrenaline overriding the pain screaming through my body. "Come on, we need to get out of here. Now," I muttered, pulling him along. He limped beside me, groaning, one arm slung over my shoulder. Behind us, the creature was still convulsing, snarling between coughing fits. We ran into the tunnel, then rounded the first corner and didn't stop. We didn't speak. Every step was survival. We just ran for our lives. Even as we tore down the tunnel, every footstep echoing in sludge and panic, we could hear it behind us, screaming, howling, its rage ricocheting off the concrete like the cries of something torn in half. But for all its fury, we never saw it give chase. No pounding footsteps, no claws scraping at our heels. It was like the thing wanted us gone but not dead. We covered the 500 feet back to the main access shaft in a blur, hearts pounding, breaths ragged. By the time the rusted ladder came into view, slick with condensation and grime, we were shaking all over. But we didn't look back, not once. And we certainly didn't care about the lost drone anymore. We were just happy to be alive. I called in sick the next morning, claiming a bad stomach flu. In truth, I could barely get out of bed. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that thing's face, the snout, the eyes, the teeth. I spent the next few days on autopilot, jumping at every sound. Eventually, I pulled myself together enough to start digging. I needed to know more about McTavish, the name on that uniform. A few hours in the department database turned up his file. Daniel McTavish, Stormwater Division, same role I held now. He'd gone off-grid 3 years ago, but the deeper I looked, the more disturbing the picture became. Archived news articles and internal memos painted a man unraveling inch by inch. Missed shifts, paranoid voicemails, disturbing journal entries logged during routine assessments. Neighbors said he'd begun ranting about shapes in the drains and voices in the sump. Then came the incident, a violent outburst where he allegedly attacked his wife and tried to bite her. She survived, but he vanished the same night, barefoot and half-naked, never to be seen again. It didn't feel like a breakdown. It felt like something had been inside him, chewing away from the inside out. A curse? Or a disease, maybe? That one seemed more logical. I didn't believe in curses or magic or any of that stuff, even after everything I'd seen. I showed Wes. He stared at the reports for a long time, pale and quiet. "You think he turned into that thing?" he finally asked. I didn't answer at first. I didn't have to. We were both thinking the same thing. Somehow, Daniel McTavish had become the thing we saw in that tunnel. A monster. A werewolf, for all intents and purposes. And he will haunt me in my dreams till the day I die.